The afternoon sun filtered through the dusty windows of Hale's books, casting golden streaks across rows of well-worn novels and forgotten poetry collections. Ethan Hale stood behind the counter, mechanically sorting through invoices while keeping one eye on his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, who sat cross-legged on the floor reading to her 4-year-old brother, Mason. Their soft whispers filled the quiet bookstore with a warmth that made the space feel more like home than business. "Daddy Mason wants the dragon story again," Lily announced, holding up a tattered picture book with a friendly green dragon on. "The cover? That's the third time today, sweetheart," Ethan replied, managing a tired smile. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed the exhaustion he tried to hide from his children. 18 months had passed since his wife Rebecca's sudden death from cancer, and the weight of single parenthood pressed down on him like a physical burden that grew heavier each day. The brass bell above the door chimed, and Clara Rivers stepped inside, shaking raindrops from her auburn hair. At 28, she possessed an understated beauty that Ethan had always appreciated, but never pursued, partly because she was his best friend, David's younger sister, and partly because he'd been completely devoted to Rebecca during their 8-year marriage. "Afternoon, Clara," Ethan said, genuinely grateful for the distraction. "Looking for anything particular today?" "Actually, I came specifically to talk to you," Clara said, her voice carrying an unusual nervousness that made Ethan pause in his sorting. She glanced at the children, who had looked up from their book with bright smiles. "Hello, Lily. Hi there, Mason. Aunt Clara." Mason squealed with delight, abandoning the book to run toward her on unsteady 4-year-old legs. Clara had earned the honorary title through countless afternoons of babysitting and holiday visits, becoming almost like family over the years. Clara scooped him up effortlessly, spinning him once before setting him down with a laugh. "I was wondering if we could chat privately for a moment, Ethan. Maybe the kids could play in the children's section while we talk." Something in her tone serious, almost formal made Ethan studied her face more carefully. Clara had always been direct and straightforward, but today she seemed almost determined. There was a set to her jaw he'd never noticed before. "Sure thing. Lily, can you take Mason to look at the new picture books? The ones with the talking animals came in yesterday. Stay where I can see you both." "Okay, Daddy," Lily said, taking her brother's hand with the responsible air of an eldest child who'd grown up too quickly. Once the children were safely occupied in the corner section, surrounded by colorful displays and tiny chairs, Clara took a deep breath that seemed to steady her entire frame. "Ethan, I've been thinking a lot about your situation, about how hard things have been since Rebecca died, and about Lily and Mason." "We're managing just fine," Ethan said automatically, though they both knew it wasn't entirely true. The bookstore barely broke even most months, and finding reliable, affordable childcare had become a constant source of stress and worry. "Are you really?" Clara's green eyes held as steadily unflinching. "Because from where I stand, you look completely exhausted. Those beautiful children need more stability than you can provide alone right now, and deep down you know that's true." Ethan felt heat rise in his cheeks, a mixture of embarrassment and defensiveness. "If you're here to lecture me about my parenting or tell me what I'm doing wrong, I'm here to offer you a solution," Clara interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "A real solution that could help everyone involved." "What kind of solution?" Ethan asked warily. Clara straightened her shoulders, looked him directly in the eye, and spoke the words that would change everything. "Marry me." The words hung in the air like smoke from a snuffed candle. Ethan stared at her, his mouth slightly open, certain he'd misheard, or that this was some kind of elaborate joke. "What did you just say?" "Marry me," Clara repeated, her voice stronger and more confident now. "I know it sounds completely crazy, but please hear me out before you say anything. You desperately need help with Lily and Mason. They need a stable mother figure in their lives. I love those kids, like they're my own already, and She paused, seeming to choose her next words very carefully. "I care about all 3 of you, more deeply than you might realize." Ethan's mind reeled, trying to process what he was hearing. "Clara, you can't possibly be serious about this. Marriage isn't some kind of business arrangement or practical solution to a problem. You're talking about your entire life, your future." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Clara said firmly, cutting him off. "I'm 28 years old." "Ethan, I want a family of my own. I want children to love and care for and watch grow up. Those two precious children over there." She gestured toward Lily and Mason, who were now building a tower out of board books. "They already have my whole heart." From the corner of his eye, Ethan watched Lily patiently helping Mason sound out simple words, their heads bent together in concentration. The sight made his chest tighten with both overwhelming love and the crushing weight of responsibility. He carried alone. "This is completely insane," he whispered, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "We're friends, Clara. Good friends. But marriage? That's something entirely different. That's supposed to be about love and romance, and it doesn't have to be a traditional marriage," Clara said, stepping closer, her expression softening with understanding. "We could take things slowly, see how everything develops naturally. But Ethan, those children need stability and consistency right now, and you need real support. I can give you both of those things." "And what exactly do you get out of this arrangement?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Clara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze drifting to Lily and Mason before returning to his face. When she spoke again, her words carried a weight of longing he'd never heard from her before. "I get the chance to be part of something beautiful and meaningful. To help raise two incredible, loving children who deserve the world. To build the family I've always dreamed of having." The bookstore fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the children's soft chatter and the steady patter of rain against the front windows. Ethan felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet, leaving him standing in completely unfamiliar territory with no map to guide him forward. I need time to think about this," he finally managed, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Of course you do," Clara nodded, understanding flooding her features. "But Ethan? Please don't take too long to decide. Those babies need an answer sooner, rather than later, and they deserve to know their future is secure." As Clara gathered her purse and bent down to kiss both children goodbye, Mason clinging to her leg, Lily wrapping thin arms around her waist, Ethan wondered if his carefully constructed world was about to change forever. 3 days passed without Ethan giving Clara an answer, but her presence seemed to linger in every corner of his life. She appeared at the bookstore during the afternoon rush, efficiently helping customers while he dealt with a crying Mason who'd scraped his knee. She showed up at Lily's school play when Ethan's elderly babysitter canceled last minute, cheering louder than any parent in the audience. Each act of kindness felt both generous and pointed, as if Clara was demonstrating exactly what life could look like with her help. Mr. Hale, Lily's teacher, Mrs. Hendricks, approached him after the play. "I hope you don't mind me saying, but Clara is wonderful with the children. Lily's been much more settled at school lately." Ethan glanced across the auditorium where Clara was helping Lily out of her costume, while Mason climbed onto the stage, pretending to be a tree like his sister had been. "She's always been good with them," shows Mrs. Hendricks smiled. "Children need that consistency, especially after what they've been through." The comment followed Ethan home that evening as he tucked his exhausted children into bed. Lily, still buzzing with excitement from her performance, chattered about how Clara had braided her hair and helped her with her lines. "Daddy, why doesn't Aunt Clara live with us?" Lily asked, as Ethan pulled her covers up to her chin. "Because she has her own house, sweetheart," Ethan replied, though the answer felt inadequate. "But she could live here," Lily persisted. "Mason's room is big enough for 2 beds, and Clara could have Mommy's office. She likes books just like you do." Asterisk. Rebecca's office remained exactly as she'd left it, her laptop still open to the novel she'd been writing, her coffee mug still sitting on the desk with a ring stain from her last morning. He couldn't bring himself to change anything, and Lily had never mentioned it before. "It's complicated, Lilybug," he said softly. "Grown-up things are always complicated." Lily sighed with the wisdom of a child who'd grown up too fast. The next morning brought an unexpected phone call from David, Clara's older brother and Ethan's closest friend since college. Asterisk. "So Clara told me about her proposal," David said without preamble. Ethan nearly dropped his coffee mug. "She told you?" "She tells me everything, man. Always has. Look, I know this probably seems crazy to you, but I've watched my sister with your kids for the past 1.5 years. She loves them, Ethan. Genuinely loves them." "That's not the point," Ethan said, settling into his desk chair after checking that Lily and Mason were still occupied with breakfast. Love isn't enough for marriage. There has to be other things: compatibility, attraction, shared goals. And you don't think you have those things with Clara? The question caught Ethan off guard. Did he? Clara was intelligent, kind, patient with his children. She shared his love of literature and had often helped at the bookstore without being asked. She was beautiful, though he trained himself not to notice that particular fact. It would be using her, Ethan said finally. She deserves someone who can give her everything, not someone who's just grateful for the help. Has it occurred to you that maybe she knows exactly what she's asking for? Clara's not some naive kid, Ethan. She's a grown woman who's thought this through. After David hung up, Ethan found himself studying Clara with new eyes when she arrived that afternoon. She moved through his bookstore like she belonged there, straightening shelves and chatting easily with customers. When Mason had a meltdown over a book he couldn't reach, Clara calmly lifted him up and read the first few pages aloud until he settled. "You're staring," Clara said quietly when the children wandered off to the picture book section. "Sorry," Ethan flushed. "I'm just trying to figure out if you're serious about all this." Clara turned to face him fully. "Do I seem like someone who makes jokes about marriage?" "No," Ethan admitted. "But you do seem like someone who might sacrifice her own happiness to help a friend." Something flickered across Clara's expression: surprise, maybe, or hurt. "What makes you think marrying you would be a sacrifice?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications Ethan wasn't sure he was ready to explore. Before he could respond, Lily came running over with a book about princesses, effectively ending their conversation. But the look in Clara's eyes lingered in Ethan's mind long after she'd gone home. That evening, as Ethan read Mason a bedtime story and listened to Lily practice piano in the living room, he allowed himself to imagine what their life might look like with Clara as a permanent part of it. The vision wasn't entirely unpleasant. In fact, it felt almost ... hopeful. But hope, Ethan had learned, could be dangerous. Clara's integration into their daily routine happened so naturally that Ethan almost didn't notice it at first. She began arriving at the bookstore earlier each day, bringing fresh coffee and pastries from the bakery down the street. She helped Lily with her homework while Ethan dealt with customers. She could calm Mason's tantrums with the patience that amazed him. "Clara, you don't have to do this every day," Ethan said one afternoon as he watched her help Mason build a fort out of picture books. "Do what?" she asked, not looking up from the precarious tower of hardcovers. "All of this, helping with everything. You have your own job, your own life." Clara worked as a freelance graphic designer, which gave her flexibility, but also meant inconsistent income. Ethan worried that she was spending too much time at the bookstore instead of focusing on her own work. "My work is portable," Clara said, simply, "and besides, this is more fun than designing logos for plumbing companies." Mason giggled as his book fort collapsed, and Clara immediately began helping him rebuild it. Watching them together, Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a loosening of the tight knot of anxiety he'd carried since Rebecca's death. "Daddy, can Clara come to my soccer game Saturday?" Lily asked that evening over dinner. "If she wants." "To," Ethan replied, glancing at Clara, who had somehow become a regular fixture at their dinner table. "I wouldn't miss it," Clara said, ruffling Lily's hair. "And can she help me tie my shoes?" "She does the bunny ears way that actually stays tied," Lily continued. Ethan realized he'd never learned the proper way to tie a child's shoes. Rebecca had always handled those details. He'd been fumbling through on his own ever since. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Clara showed up to Lily's soccer game, wearing a team t-shirt she'd apparently bought specially. For the occasion, she cheered enthusiastically from the sidelines, while keeping Mason entertained with snacks and coloring books. "Your wife is great with kids," commented Jenny Morrison, another parent from Lily's team. "Oh, we're not," Ethan began. But Jenny had already moved on to chat with someone else. The assumption should have bothered him. But instead, he found himself observing Clara through new eyes. She had Mason on her lap now, pointing out different players and explaining the rules of soccer in simple terms he could understand. When Lily scored her first goal of the season, Clara jumped up so enthusiastically that she nearly knocked over the cooler. Did you see that, Ethan? Did you see Lily's goal? Clara grabbed his arm in excitement, her eyes bright with joy.
I saw.
Ethan smiled, and for a moment forgot that this wasn't real, that Clara wasn't actually his wife, wasn't actually his children's mother. After the game, they celebrated at the ice cream shop downtown. Lily regaled them with a detailed replay of every kick, while Mason contentedly licked chocolate ice cream from his fingers. "Aunt Clara," Lily said suddenly, "are you going to marry Daddy?" Ethan's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. Clara didn't miss a beat. "Would you like that?" she asked Lily seriously. "Yes." Lily nodded emphatically. "Then you could live with us always, and Mason wouldn't cry when you have to go home." "Lily, that's not," Ethan started, but Clara held up a gentle hand. "That's a very thoughtful answer, Lily. And if your daddy and I did get married, what would you want to call me?" Lily considered this carefully. "Could I call you Mama Clara? Because you're not my first mommy, but you could be my second mommy." Ethan felt his throat close up. Clara's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. "I would be honored to be your Mama Clara," she said softly. That night, after the children were asleep, Ethan found Clara washing dishes in his kitchen. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," Clara replied. "But I want to." They worked in comfortable silence, Ethan drying while Clara washed. The domesticity of it felt both foreign and familiar, like slipping into clothes that fit perfectly despite being borrowed. "Clara," Ethan said finally, "Lily's question earlier was perfectly innocent," Clara finished. "They can sense when adults care about each other, do we? Care about each other in that way?" Clara's hands stilled in the soapy water. "I think you know the answer to that, Ethan. The question is whether you're ready to admit it." Could respond. Clara dried her hands and gathered her purse. "Think about it," she said quietly. "But don't think too long. Some opportunities don't wait forever." As the door closed behind her, Ethan realized that somewhere between the soccer game and the ice cream shop, between watching Clara read to his son and comfort his daughter, his feelings had shifted from gratitude to something much more complicated and much more dangerous. Ethan's decision was made on a Tuesday morning in November when he found Mason crying inconsolably because Clara wasn't there to make his special pancakes. Lily had developed a habit of asking when Clara was coming every morning, and when she wasn't there by afternoon, both children grew restless and cranky. The house felt empty without her laughter filling the rooms. He was rehearsing what he would say to Clara when he called her that evening, when Lily made a discovery that changed everything. "Daddy, what's this?" Lily appeared in the doorway of Rebecca's office, holding an envelope with her mother's handwriting on the front. Ethan's blood turned cold. He'd been avoiding this room for months, unable to face the remnants of his wife's unfinished life. But Lily, in her 7-year-old curiosity, had finally ventured inside. "Where did you find that?" he asked, taking the envelope with trembling hands. "Behind Mommy's computer. It fell down when I was looking for her book about the princess who saved herself." The envelope was addressed to him in Rebecca's careful script, but the paper was yellowed and the ink slightly faded. This wasn't recent. It was dated nearly 2 years ago, just after Rebecca's diagnosis. "Lily, can you go check on Mason, please? Make sure he's not getting into anything he shouldn't." Alone in Rebecca's office. Ethan opened the letter with shaking hands. "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, then the cancer won, and I'm not there to help you with what comes next. I hope you waited a decent amount of time before cleaning out my office, but knowing you probably haven't touched anything yet. I need to tell you something about Clara that I should have told you years ago. Remember when we first met? Her at David's birthday party? You thought she was shy, barely spoke to anyone. The truth is, she was in love with you. Had been since college, according to David. I saw the way she looked at you that night, and I knew. I also knew she would never act on it because she's too good a person to interfere in someone else's relationship. So I made a decision that might seem cruel now, but felt necessary then." Ethan's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the paper. Asterisk, asterisk. "I asked David to keep Clara away from us. Not completely. I wasn't that heartless, but enough so that she couldn't be around you regularly. I told myself it was to protect our marriage, but really, I was protecting myself. Because even then, I could see that you and Clara had something. Connection. The same love of books and quiet mornings and philosophical conversations that drew us together originally. I was jealous, Ethan, and scared. And I made a choice to keep her at arm's length from our family, but now I'm dying and all I can think about is who will take care of you and our babies when I'm gone. Who will love Lily's dramatic retellings of her day and Mason's obsession with building blocks? Who will read to them the way they deserve to be read too? The answer has been Clara all along. She loves our children already. I've seen it in her eyes every time she's around them. She loves you, though she's too noble to ever admit it. Well, I'm alive. So here's what I'm asking of you, my darling husband. When enough time has passed, when you're ready to consider loving someone again, think about Clara. Really think about her. Not as David's sister or our family friend, but as the woman who could make you happy again. I know this must sound insane, me giving you permission to love someone else, but Ethan, I want you to be happy. I want our children to have a mother who adores them. And Clara is the only person I trust with the most precious parts of my heart. Love always. REBECCAP.S. There's something else Clara doesn't know. Remember that first day Mason was born? When you called everyone to come meet him? Clara dropped everything to drive 3 hours just to see him for 20 minutes before driving back home. That's not the behavior of a casual family friend, my love. That's the behavior of someone who already considers herself part of our family. Ethan read the letter 3 times before it finally sank in. Rebecca had known. Not only had she known about Clara's feelings, but she'd actively encouraged their separation to protect her own marriage. And now, from beyond the grave, she was giving her blessing for the very relationship she'd once feared. His phone was ringing. Clara's name appeared on the screen. Hello. His voice came out rough, strained. Ethan, you sound terrible. Is everything okay? Clara, I need to see you tonight. Can you come over after the kids are in bed? Of course, what's wrong? I'll explain when you get here. When Clara arrived 2 hours later, Ethan was sitting at his kitchen table with Rebecca's letter spread out in front of him. Clara took one look at his face and knew something had fundamentally changed. What is it? She asked, sliding into the chair across from him. Wordlessly, Ethan handed her the letter Clara read in silence, her face growing pale as she processed Rebecca's words. When she finished, she set the letter down carefully and looked up at Ethan with tears in her eyes. She knew, Clara whispered. All this time, she knew how I felt about you. Did you love me back then? Clara's silence. Was answer enough? Why didn't you ever say anything? Ethan asked. Because you were married to my friend, Clara said simply. Because Rebecca was dying and you were grieving, and those children needed stability, not more upheaval in their lives. And now, Clara met his eyes directly. Now, I love you even more. And I love Lily and Mason like they're my own. The question is, what do you want, Ethan? Not what Rebecca wanted, not what's convenient, not what makes the most sense. What do you want? Ethan looked at this woman who had seamlessly woven herself into his family's life, who had loved his children with fierce protectiveness, who had asked for nothing in return except the chance to care for them all. You, he said simply, I want you. Asterisk, the wedding took place on a snowy December morning in the children's section of Hale's books, surrounded by fairy tales and picture books that had witnessed countless hours of Clara reading to Lily and Mason. Ethan had initially suggested City Hall, but Lily had other ideas. We should get married where you fell in love, she announced with 7-year-old certainty. And where was that? Clara had asked, amused. Right here, when you read us the story about the princess who saved the dragon instead of killing it. Daddy got that same look he used to get when Mommy sang to us. Clara and Ethan exchanged glances over Lily's head, both recognizing the truth in the child's observation. There had been a moment, several weeks into Clara's daily visits, when Ethan had looked up from organizing inventory to see her acting out different character voices for an enchanted forest story. Mason had been giggling helplessly and Lily had been hanging on every word, and Ethan had felt something shift permanently in his chest. Here it is then, Clara had agreed. Now, standing between towering bookshelves, with 20 of their closest friends and family members squeezed into the space. Ethan marveled at how right this felt. Clara wore a simple, cream-colored dress and carried a bouquet of white roses mixed with Lily's hand-picked wildflowers. Lily stood beside her in a navy velvet dress, holding Mason's hand to keep him from wandering off during the ceremony. "Do you, Ethan James Hale, take Clara to be your wife?" asked Pastor Williams, who had agreed to perform the unusual venue ceremony. Ethan looked at Clara. Ethan looked at her. Her green eyes were bright with unshed tears, and her smile was soft and genuine and completely without reservation. That moment he saw not just the woman who had offered to help raise his children, but the woman who had already been doing it for months, without expectation of anything in return. "I do," he said, and meant it completely. "And do you, Clara Rose Rivers, take Ethan to be your husband?" "I do," Clara replied, her voice steady and clear. "And do you both promise to love and care for Lily and Mason as partners in this family you're creating together?" This wasn't a traditional part of wedding vows, but Pastor Williams had suggested it when they'd explained their unusual circumstances. Ethan and Clara spoke in unison. "We do. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Ethan stepped closer to Clara, suddenly nervous. They had barely kissed at all during their brief engagement, both of them wanting to take things slowly, to build their relationship on a foundation of friendship and shared commitment rather than passion alone. But when their lips met, Ethan felt the final piece of his new life click into place. Clara's kiss was gentle but sure, and when they parted, she whispered, "We're going to be okay. You know that, right, Daddy?" "Aunt Clara, you're married?" Lily squealed, breaking the solemnity of the moment. Mason, not fully understanding what was happening but caught up in the excitement, began clapping enthusiastically. The reception was held in the bookstore's main room, with David serving as both best man and self-appointed photographer. Ethan's parents had driven in from Florida, and Clara's parents had come from Seattle, all of them slightly bewildered by the quick engagement, but charmed by the obvious affection between the new couple and their devotion to the children. "So how long have you two really been in love?" Ethan's mother asked Clara during the cake cutting. Clara glanced at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. "About 6 years," she admitted. "But timing matters, doesn't it?" "Does indeed," Ethan's mother agreed, squeezing Clara's hand warmly. Later that evening, after the guests had gone home and the children were tucked into bed in their house that was now officially Clara's home too, Ethan found his new wife in the kitchen making tea. "Any regrets?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "Only that it took us so long to get here," Clara replied, leaning back against his chest. They stood quietly for a moment, listening to the winter wind against the windows and the settling sounds of their old house adjusting to new circumstances. "Clara," Ethan said finally, "I need you to know something." She turned in his arms to face him. "What's that? This isn't just about the children anymore. Somewhere along the way, without me even realizing it, I fell in love with you. Truly in love. Not grateful, not settling, not making the best of a difficult situation. In love." Clara's smile was radiant. "Good," she said simply. "Because I didn't go through all this trouble just to be a live-in babysitter." Ethan laughed, the sound rusher and freer than anything that had come from him in years. "No, I suppose you didn't, Daddy, Mama Clara." Lily's voice came from the top of the stairs. "Mason had a bad dream." Without hesitation, Clara headed for the stairs. "Coming, sweetheart." Ethan watched her go, still marveling at how naturally she'd stepped into the role of mother. Not replacement mother, not substitute mother, but simply mother. Rebecca had been right. Clara did love their children as if they were her own. By the time he reached Mason's room, Clara already had the little boy settled back in bed, humming softly while rubbing his back. "Better?" she asked. Mason nodded sleepily. "Sing the song about the stars?" Clara's gentle voice filled the room with a lullaby Ethan didn't recognize, but somehow felt he'd been waiting his whole life to hear. He realized that his children would never remember a time when they hadn't been loved unconditionally by this remarkable woman. They had all gotten much more than they'd bargained for. And for the first time since Rebecca's death, Ethan allowed himself to believe that their future was going to be not just okay, but truly wonderfully happy. His response to Clara's original proposition had left them all speechless with joy. Asterisk.